Hi there. So in this video, I'm going to show you some basic glazing techniques on a cylindrical work of art that has been thrown on the potter's wheel. So here I have a small drinking glass, basically, that was thrown on the wheel, and then some textures were added to it, fired at a mid-fire range, so it's that harder stoneware. What I'm doing is I would either put it on a spinning rotating pot, or I could put it on something like this, and I can actually spin it while I'm painting the side of it. You'll be able to see me do that. This I'm glazing for my husband. He's a real big fan of orange. And the closest thing that I have to an orange that is interesting looking is this deep sienna speckle. So I'm going to put a glaze over that and just show you this technique. Now, if you recall, as a glazer, you always want to put 3 coats of glaze onto your pottery. If you're able to open the container first, this is obviously Mrs. Mangy proof. Okay. All right. So one thing that you might notice right off the bat, just some reminders on glazes. These are specific ones that I bought for myself, my home. So I don't have a number on it, but you'll notice that the color that the piece will be and the color while it's wet looks different. So remember, always label your glazes with a number. Okay. So as you notice, I've already waxed the bottom of the piece, as I have done in the past. This is going to reduce the likeliness of my piece sticking to the kiln. And you can see how that glaze beads up along that edge. So this technique of working out of the jar is not the norm. This is not how we do our glazing typically in the classroom. You would have it in your own little individual cup. That deters any extra contamination. You do not want an entire canister of glaze contaminated with another color because they're expensive. This glaze, I don't know, cost me about 20 bucks. So yeah, it's expensive. So what I like to do is I like to use a large fan brush if I have a large area that I'm glazing. It has great coverage, and I do a nice spin and rotate it around. Okay, and I'm just simply going to use that technique. You can kind of see how this is starting to cover. The really neat thing about adding texture to your clay artwork, besides its natural clay texture, is that the glazes typically react in a very interesting way around, underneath, or on top, or on the bottom of a given texture. So a lot of times glazes are quite interesting material because with the heat it reacts differently. Sometimes it reacts differently depending on the amount of gravity, or the depth, I should say, of the texture, and gravity, of course, always plays a role. So what's going to happen is that this little guy, he needs to dry. So looks like that all the way around. Did not get my rim of my piece just yet. I'm kind of afraid. Let's see if I can go left-handed on this one a little bit. I'm going to work and add some color on the lip of this. My plan is that inside my cup, I'm going to do like probably a whitish glaze. And then I'll probably throw in some speckles of this sienna color on the inside of the look if I put white on the inside. So just going to sit out to dry a little bit. Close this up. Anytime I work with a color, another color, and switch off, I'm going to rinse really well. And this now has 2 colors in it, which means with this little bit of water that's in here, it's not quite enough to dilute my unusual mix. I'm going to do a quick and a quick dump of color here. Okay, so usually you kids at the table are using a large bucket. It will change the color up quite a bit. Now my brush looks so much better than it did before. So I'm going to get the rest of that debris off along with the water. Just going to let that dry up, scooch this little one over. And what I'm going to do next, I'm going to add coat number 2 of a previous piece that I was glazing before. So on this piece, I am glazing it what's called rose granite. This does not look like rose at all. Okay, this rose granite color will be kind of an earthy rose color, kind of pinkish, but you can see it looks black. So we always label our containers properly. So I'm going to put my second coat on. I'm going to use this as a spinning dreidel. That's going to work really easily. And I'm going to go in and start working on this. Now, if you remember, if we're painting on our glazes, we want to do 3 coats. And if I'm painting and glazing a large piece as a whole, I will put the second coat on in the opposite direction that I put the first coat on. So for instance, yesterday I glazed my piece going like this around the bowl. What I'm going to do today, I'm going to paint the glaze going in the opposite direction. So I'm going to work up and down the bowl. And when I get to put glaze number 3 on, I will end that glaze going around the bowl like I did with coat number 1. So you can see I'm just kind of spreading that all out. And I'm going to finish this set. So this is, again, coat number 2. My plan for this bowl is for me to do a dip, a partial dip into an additional color. So this is going to be rose granite. To add a little bit of lightness to it, I'm going to end up using a little bit of a color called Sahara Sand, which is another earthy color, and it's much tamer, a little bit of a tannish color, warm tan. And what I'll end up doing, and I'll videotape this, and I will dip it partially into a bowl. So it will have kind of a neat asymmetrical offset pattern to it. All right, that's coat number 2. I'm just getting those little flecks that I've missed here. All right, so as usual, clean off my brush on my container. I like to save as much glaze as possible. Again, cost of materials is everything. Put that off to the side. And this is a little damp, so I'm going to go in and, while I can, I'm just going to do a little wipe off of that extra wet glaze. Okay. I'll do a little flip here. I do not want this wet glaze on the bottom of this pot. It's not going to look good. So I'm going to go ahead and glaze the inside of this now. This is still my Sahara. Sorry, my rose, what's it called again? My rose granite. It's going on the inside. You might notice a little bit of wax at the bottom on my bowl. That's a major blooper. So when I waxed the bottom of all of my containers here, I had some wax left over on my finger, and my finger happened to touch the bottom of the bowl while I was flipping it, and which means I got wax on the piece before I glazed it, which means when I fire this little guy, I'm going to end up seeing the white of my bowl shine through. So the pure stoneware of it, which is a bummer. And if I wanted it to be food safe, it then would not be food safe, only because it's not glazed and it's not impermeable then. Now, that is not to say that I couldn't do a second firing. So after I do my first firing, in that first firing, that wax burns away, which would expose the white. And then I could just put a little touch of glaze. What I have to be willing to risk, though, is the possible change of effect of my first firing. So as an artist, I have to kind of risk that a little bit. All right, so this bowl now has 2 entire coats of glaze. Let's let this guy dry, or I can blow dry it. I want to walk it over with my podium to the blow dryer and be able to work with that. But you can kind of see that this is nicely glazed. Can you believe it? This piece will be an earthy pink, not a black. Can't wait. That is how to glaze a very round piece. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add some glaze to this guy. This is my little planter. All right, so I'm going to add a gray to this, and stay tuned. I will be creating and showing you a video on how to add bubbles. Yes, a bubble pattern to your glaze pieces, and it looks like bubbles. They're so cool looking. So stay tuned. Go find how to do that. Bye.